This bipartisan legislation the Senate is poised to pass in just a few minutes doesn't just secure our borders or just mend our broken legal immigration system, but this legislation is what Astrid has advocated, what the Dreamers have advocated, and others have advocated. This legislation is what she and millions have hoped for, and yes, Mr. President, prayed for. The bill paves the way for people just like Astrid, people who are American and all but paid for. It allows them to become full participants in our great society. It acknowledges the contribution of generations of immigrants who founded this country and built it into the superpower it is today. Mr. President, immigrants just like a man named Israel Goldfarb. He left Russia. He was Jewish. He was being persecuted, he and his family. So he came to America as a boy. Now, this man was my wife's dad. Now, Mr. President, I often think of him for a lot of reasons. He died as a real young man, and perhaps a lot of people think that he didn't contribute much to our society. But he had one child. My wonderful wife. And now we have 16 grandchildren. So he contributed that. 5 children, 16 grandchildren. Mr. President, on his deathbed, as I said, as a young man, he gave me his ring. I've worn this ring for those many, many years. I take it off at night, put it on every day. This watch I have. Mr. President, my watch stopped running a couple of months ago, and the jeweler said it's broken, it's worn out, it's 50 years old. You know, it's an old-fashioned watch. You have to wind it every morning. But they fixed it. I got the watch back. It's good for another 50 years. Mr. President, I could buy a different watch, but I'm not going to buy a different watch. These are who I am, and they remind me every day of this man who came to America as Israel Goldfarb, and like all of his family, changed his name to Earl Gould. My wife, when I met her as a sophomore in high school, she was Landra Gould. So, Mr. President, this bipartisan legislation that we're poised to pass in just a little while doesn't just secure our borders or just mend our broken legal system. This is the legislation that's been advocated, and it paves the way for people like Astrid, and frankly, people like my father-in-law. May you rest in peace. It acknowledges the contribution of generations of immigrants who founded this country. This historic legislation recognizes that today's immigrants came for the right reason, the same reason as generations before them, the same as Israel Goldfarb, to achieve a dream we take for granted, the right to live in a land that's free. Ted Kennedy said it best. From Jamestown to the Pilgrims to the Irish to today's workers, people have come to this country in search of opportunity. They've sought nothing more than a chance to work hard and bring a better life to themselves and their families. They came to our country with their hearts and minds full of hope. That's what he said. The bipartisan legislation before the United States Senate today respects and fulfills that hope, the prayer of Astrid, and millions just like her. It'll help 11 million people tired of looking over their shoulders and fearing deportation to get right with the law and start down the pathway to citizenship. The path is going to be really hard. Penalties, fines, work, pay taxes, stay out of trouble, learn English. But they're willing to do that, every one of them. It'll mean going to the back of the line. It's tough, I repeat, but it's fair. And above all, it's very practical. It makes unprecedented investments in our borders. It cracks down on crooked employers like Senator McCain talked about earlier today, who exploit and abuse immigrant workers. and it reforms our legal immigration system. This legislation will be good for America's national security as well as its economic security. Mr. President, this will reduce the deficit by $1 trillion. How's that for economic security? 6 years ago, the last time we considered a sweeping immigration overhaul led by Senators McCain and, yes, that good man who became Secretary of Interior, Ken Salazar. That didn't work. Prospects for a bipartisan solution were very dim. On the last day, the immigration bill fell because of a procedural roadblock. Ted Kennedy urged those of us who believe deeply in this cause to keep the faith. Here's what he said. We'll be back and we will prevail. America always finds a way to solve its problems, Ted said. Expand its frontiers and move closer to its ideals. It is not always easy, but it is the American way. That's what Ted Kennedy said. Because of the Gang of Eight, these courageous senators, four Democrats, four Republicans, Schumer, Durbin, Menendez, and of course the quiet one who did so much, Senator Bennett. I admire John McCain. He and I came to the Congress together more than 31 years ago. We came to the Senate together. Have we fought with each other? Oh, yeah. But we care a great deal about each other. Mr. President, John McCain, no matter what happens, I will be his friend and he will be my friend. I admire what he's done. He was truly a leader, as he has been for so long in this country. Lindsey Graham. Mr. President, he's up for re-election. Is this a badge of courage? It sure is. Marco Rubio, Jeff Flake. I admire every one of them. And I'm not going to forget about Bob Corker. I'm not going to forget about mentioning Governor Hoeven. They allowed us to get votes with this. I will always admire these two. Again, courageous men who stepped forward, stepped out of the crowd, and did something that was right. So, Mr. President, they're wonderful, all of them. You see, Senator Kennedy knew the day would come when a group of senators, divided by party but united by love of country, would see the fight to the finish, and that's what we did. That's what these 10 men allowed us to do. And I'm not going to ever forget about the man seated right behind me, Senator Leahy. His markup will go down in history. It was the way that we are here today. He's my friend. I will always admire how he handles everything he does, but especially what he did on this bill. So the day is today. And while I'm sad that Senator Kennedy isn't here to see history made, I know that he is looking at us proudly and loudly. Remember that voice? But you know, Mr. President, he's not alone. I have no doubt that my father-in-law, is here in spirit. Astrid Silva is here today. I'm sure she's in the gallery someplace. And she'll be looking down from where she's seated when the United States Senate votes to expand this country's frontiers and moves it closer to its ideals. But she's not here alone. She's here representing millions of others just like her, people who have hoped and prayed for this day. Mr. President, their prayers have been answered. But these prayers, their hopes have not gotten us to the finish line yet. The finish line is very close to here, down this very long hallway to the House of Representatives. Mr. President, I'm reminded in closing of a poem, a song. Here's what it says. I can see a new day soon to be, when the storm clouds are all past and the sun shines in a world that is free. I can see a new man standing tall, with his head high and his heart proud and afraid of nothing at all. I can see a new day soon to be, when the storm clouds are all past and the sun shines in a world that is free. Colleagues, I'm confident the House of Representatives will pass this legislation because I can see a new man standing tall, with his head high, his heart proud, and afraid of nothing at all.